I feel I should preface this story with the statement that I am usually a skeptic when it comes to paranormal stories, albeit an open-minded one. I had never had an experience I would truly say was paranormal until this. I have searched for hours on Google attempting to find a similar story from someone else, and have had no luck. What really stands out for me is that there is an energy or feeling that accompanies the experience, and most people that know me would probably be surprised that I would be spooked by much of anything. I'm a veteran, and I have spent years since leaving the military working in emergency rooms, specialized security, and doing other high adrenaline jobs, and I am not prone to being creeped out. I am hoping to find someone else who may have had a similar experience, as I feel oddly compelled to relate to someone about this. With that, here goes. A couple of months ago, I was driving with my wife down a rural highway in Oregon, returning home from a road trip to Crater Lake. We live on the coast, and the highway we were taking to get back is very curvy, as it winds through the Cascade Mountain Range. It was dark as ink, and probably about 11 p.m. We were driving along and I was watching the road, going about 45. We round a bend, which makes me slow down a bit, and as we're coming around, my wife suddenly says,
"Look out!"
It takes me a second for some reason, but then I notice her, him, or it, crouched near the side of this two-lane highway. On my left is a person wearing what looks like gray baggy sweats and a reflective vest. This is easily 20 miles in either direction from civilization, and is heavily wooded. Think Oregon coast forest. I begin braking, and suddenly the figure stands up, faces us, and begins jogging directly at the car. It felt like electricity in the air, and when she faced us, her head was flopped to the side, like her neck was totally limp, and her mouth was wide open. She appeared to have gray hair, and her arms and hands were held up to her chest, her wrists curled. Her legs didn't seem to be working right either, as she hobbled at us. Think like severe progressed MS. Then it hit. This primal-like feeling of dread, like my subconscious knew something wasn't right. I couldn't fully focus on her, as the car was still moving and I had to steer, but my wife was looking right at her. My first thought, normally, would have been to hit the brakes and see what was going on, as once again, this is literally miles and miles from town. But there was just this dread feeling in the air, and time almost seemed to slow down. At that moment, I hear my wife say,
"Don't stop."
Instinctively, I accelerated. As we sped up, this lady was jogging right at us, and must have come within a foot of running into the side of our car as we went past her. We rounded the next bend, and I looked at my wife and just said, "What the hell was that? I should turn around. Who the hell jogs out here? What was wrong with her neck?" My wife just looks at me and says,
"No. Do not go back. I don't know what that was."
I told her I didn't get to see her for very long, as I was focused on the road, but described what I saw, and she confirmed she saw the same. She said when she got up to the side of the car, she was staring right at us, and my wife looked her in the eyes. She said she didn't have any pupils, and her expression stayed frozen, mouth open. We scoured news stories, and I even contacted authorities. They said no one was reported missing or hurt out there. I still get this strange, intense, electrified feeling anytime I think about her, and so does my wife. Anytime I talk about her, I am compelled to refer to her as it. All I know is, it wasn't right. We have nicknamed her the floppy-headed jogger. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Whilst driving to Ciudad Hidalgo, In Mexico, back in the 80s, we had two ways to get there. The National Road, or the Old National Road, which was called Mil Cumbres. Mil Cumbres basically means 1,000 curves, so a lot of people would get motion sickness when on that road. One evening on our way back to my grandparents', my grandfather was driving, and he loved taking Mil Cumbres because it had really nice views. But since we had the new National Road, not a lot of people used the old one anymore, so it was kind of desolate, with the exception of passing one or two little towns. It was dusk, which meant we would be in complete darkness. It takes about 2 hours to get to the town on that road, so maybe 45 minutes in, it had already gotten really dark, and suddenly my grandfather started slowing down. I was sitting in the back seat because my grandmother was in the front, so I kind of stood up to look and see why we were slowing down. That's when I saw a huge log blocking the road. My grandfather came to a complete stop and immediately started going in reverse to turn around. After we did, he slammed on the gas, and I was sort of thrown back into the seat. I immediately turned around to see if I could see anything, and as we were speeding away, I could see men, very dimly, since it was from the taillights of the car. They were coming out of the trees next to the log on the road. They started turning flashlights on. They had guns. We were about to get robbed, and thanks to my grandfather's quick thinking and taking action immediately, we avoided it. That was the last time I was ever on that road. This is my uncle's story. My name is Rick Martinez, and I'm a retired truck driver. This happened when I was about 30 years old. I am now 62. On the road, I have seen many strange things. I've told the story over and over. A lot of people don't believe me, but it starts off in Stockton, California, where I picked up a load of pipe. My destination was Salt Lake City, Utah, so I was supposed to refuel in Barstow, California at a truck stop, but lo and behold, they were out of gas. So I called my supervisor and said, "Hey, I got like half a tank of fuel," and he told me just to continue and hit the first truck stop I see. So 100 miles into Nevada, and nothing but desert, I noticed my gauge was reading empty, and I'm thinking that's not right. So I took the first exit I saw and pulled over. I told my supervisor, who was an hour behind me, that I was afraid to continue on and run the tanks dry. So he told me to sit still and he would be by in an hour, and we could siphon some fuel from his tanks into mine. So I sat there. I noticed that it was a small town with sparse lighting. I couldn't run the engine, so I just sat in silence. Now, I don't do drugs, and I didn't make this up, so listen carefully. As I'm sitting there, I notice a lot of undone construction in the trailer park to my right. It's completely dark, and there's a church off to my left about a block away with its lights on. It's about 2 a.m. I see this jackrabbit hopping around my truck. It hops a few times and stares at me, and continues on. I notice a convenience store about a block past the church, so I get off the truck and start walking. As I'm walking, I keep hearing this dog howling like it's in pain. As I'm passing the church, the 2 doors are wide open, and I hear clapping like they're having services. I look inside, and there's no one except for this skinny white old man reading from the Bible and talking about hell. I don't linger too long, and I'm now past the church, and I hear the clapping again. The dog is still howling. I'm approaching the little mini-mart. All the lights are on. As I go inside, this little old lady with glasses is reading a book. There's hardly anything in this store. Maybe a few cans of food, a couple bags of chips, and only waters in the refrigerators. The whole time, the lady didn't even look up from her book. So I grab a water and some chips. I'm hungry as hell. I ask the old lady, "Is this all you have?" And where is everybody? She said everybody moved out, and new construction was supposed to begin like 6 months ago. So I pay her and start making my way back to the truck. The dog howls again. I decided to go see this dog for myself. I had nothing else to do. Houses on both sides of the street are boarded up and dark, but I saw a house with the lights on, with about a 5-foot fence. When I looked over the fence, I was in shock. I saw a man in his underwear, on all fours, a chain wrapped around his neck. It was him that was howling. The hairs on my arms and neck stood up, and suddenly this other man burst through the back door and kicked the man, yelling at him to shut up. He crawled into a doghouse. I immediately turned and ran back down the hill to my truck. As I passed the church, both doors are still wide open. There were no lights on anymore, but there were still clapping. I finally made it to my truck and called my supervisor and told him what I saw. I told him hurry the hell up and get here. He asked me what exit I said I got off on, and when I told him, he said, "Oh, I passed that." He had to turn around and come back to get me. So I'm sitting there and the rabbit is still hopping around my truck. It stopped and looked up at me. Now, I'm not saying the rabbit said this, but what I heard in my head was, "Leave." And I know that doesn't make any sense, but it's the best way I can describe it. My supervisor showed up 5 minutes later, and I told him what happened. He just laughed and said, "I'm gonna have to drug test you." But like I said before, I don't do drugs. In 2010, I was driving from New Orleans, Louisiana to Eugene, Oregon. It was just me, a 24-year-old female, and my 2-year-old pit bull in a 14-foot U-Haul truck with everything I owned crammed into the back. A fancy flip phone, and my printout of MapQuest directions. I think the first smartphones actually came out around that time, but I didn't have one. I was driving a lonely stretch of highway through central Texas when I realized I hadn't seen a town or exit for a very long time, and my giant U-Haul was really low on gas. Just when I'm starting to freak out, I see a small town coming up. I pull into this town, and it is tiny. I was so worried about other things that I never did pay attention to the name of the town, but there were only about 6 streets in the whole place. I go gas up and I'm ready to get back on the road, except I cannot for the life of me find my way back to the highway. I circle the town about 4 times and start getting so frustrated because this is such a tiny town. How the fuck can I not find my way out? I can literally see the highway, but can't get to it. I returned to the gas station to ask for directions. Now, when I got gas, I paid at the pump and never went in. So I enter for directions. There's a skinny, nondescript guy who has black hair hanging down in front of his eyes that looks like it could use a good wash. He's not particularly creepy, but a little rude. He never really met my eyes. He was looking down at a magazine. He gives me directions that don't sound right at all. He's telling me to take a road that will get me to the highway in about 17 miles. For a moment, I am dumbfounded. Then I point out that I didn't drive that far to get from the highway into town. Why so far to get back? I can literally see it. He is so casual, almost like I am just an annoyance, and I can follow his directions or not. Why should he care? He gives me some explanation about the road curving around that doesn't really make any sense. He still doesn't look at me. Just whatever, I gave you your directions, and waved his hand in the direction of the door. When I got into the parking lot, my whole body started trembling violently, and my heart started racing. I get into the truck, and as soon as I put the key into the ignition, I burst into tears. I had the most terrible feeling that, no matter how nonchalant he acted, this man had bad intentions. I didn't know what, but I knew right then and there I wasn't going to go where he told me to. Yet this was the only store in this little town, and short of knocking on doors, no thank you, there was no one else to ask for directions. I decided I didn't give a shit if this town seemed like something dropped out of the Twilight Zone. I was going to drive around until I found my own way out, even if it took all damn night. Just then, a big red beater of a pickup truck, as much rust as metal, pulls in, and disgorged the quintessential Texas man. Huge, husky, and in flannel and work boots. Without even thinking about it, I jumped out of the truck and approached him quickly yet warily. Looking into his eyes, I saw a kind human being, or at least I was hoping I did. I asked him if he could please give me directions to the highway. I told him I knew it was silly, but I just couldn't seem to find my way back. He looked concerned as I was visibly upset, so he made me laugh, and very cheerfully gave me directions for a hairpin curved turnoff right at the end of a small concrete tunnel I had passed several times. He said it often confused travelers because it was so hard to see. They need to put up a sign, etc. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I asked him how far in miles it was back to the highway. He laughed and gave me a funny look.
Miles, miss? I'd say it's a quarter mile at most. You can see the highway right from here.
At this point, I couldn't help it. I had to know, and I gave him the directions the man in the store had given me. Texas looked at me very intently and asked me how I knew about that route. It was pretty far out, and usually only locals know about it, so I told him. He was quiet for a few minutes, then asked if I had a map of the state. Nope, just my MapQuest, which wasn't helpful in this situation. He goes to his truck and grabs a raggedy local map from his glove box. Spreading it out for me, he traces the route I described. The way the man from the gas station had told me to go led away from town, away from the interstate, and led to seemingly the middle of nowhere. Texas told me that the road did go about 17 miles, right before it dead-ended in the desert. I asked him what was out there, and he told me that it was nothing but some junked cars and a few trailers and mobile homes, all owned by the same family. This family was known locally as troublemakers, meth heads, and alcoholics, and these were the nice things townspeople had to say about them, and that the clerk was part of this family and lived down that road. I'll never forget the look in Texas's eyes as he told me this. He also told me that I was smart to listen to my instincts, and he told me to be careful traveling out there. I don't know if the man from the gas station wanted what was in the back of my U-Haul or what was in the driver's seat, but thankfully I didn't have to find out. Oh, and I learned that sometimes angels look like ruddy-haired Texans with scruffy faces and rusty pickups. Thank you, random Texas stranger. You really saved my ass, and I will always remember you with tons of love. Sorry I didn't ask your name. You're forever Texas to me now. This happened to me about 20 years ago when I was living in very rural southeastern Montana. One Saturday afternoon, a little after 4, I suddenly remembered that I had to return some library books that were due that day, and the library closed at 5. The library was 45 minutes away if you stuck to the highways, and 35 to 40 minutes away if you took a shortcut using a dirt road. The dirt road cut through ranch land on either side, and was also a shortcut to the nearest city, about 8,000 people at that time, big for this part of Montana, so it was relatively well traveled. If you drove it during the day, you'd probably see 1 to 3 other cars coming and going. So I took the dirt road to give myself a few minutes to look around the library for more books before it closed. I was driving a big SUV that belonged to the school I worked at, and I was driving pretty fast. At some point, I turned a right-hand bend in the road, and then I saw this scene before me. On the right side of the dirt road was a pickup truck, parked perpendicularly to the road. It was on the strip of grass in between the road and a barbed wire fence, with its front grille parked against the fence. On the other side of the fence, where the cattle would be, there was a man in a white t-shirt and jeans crouched down on the ground, sitting back on his heels and looking down at the ground in front of him. His back was to the fence, so I saw him from his side view as I approached. He did not react or move at all while my very loud SUV passed by. On the road side of the fence, through the tall grass, I saw a man's arm waving slowly in the air. The grass obscured his body from my sight, but I could tell that there was a man lying parallel to the road and inches away from the road, lying on his back with his head pointed back toward the pickup truck. And like I said, he was waving his arm. He waved in a slow, jerky movement, like he was in a daze or too weak to wave vigorously. He did not sit up as I drove by. There was no visible damage to the truck or the fence that I could see. There were no debris or skid marks in the dirt road, and I had not had to swerve around the truck while driving. But my impression was that the truck had gotten into an accident, and the man lying in the grass was injured and trying to flag me down for help. This scene caught me off guard, since I hadn't been able to see it until I turned around the curve in the road. So it took me a few moments to register what I had seen. And by that time, I had driven past the scene and couldn't see it in my rearview mirror. To cut an already long story short, I decided not to stop and check on the man, but instead I'd stop at the sheriff's station, that just so happened to be in the same building as the library, to let them know that I had seen an accident on the dirt road, and maybe someone should go check it out. But as I thought more about the scene, it didn't seem to make any sense. If the man lying in the grass was injured, why didn't the other man wave me down, or react at all to me driving past them? And was the laying man injured? There was no sign of an accident that I could see, but why else would someone lie that close to a dirt road and not sit up as a vehicle approached unless he was injured? My thoughts kept going around and around, and I decided not to stop at the sheriff's station after all, figuring that soon enough another car would pass by, and they could help the men if they were still there. I arrived at the library, dropped off my books, and got new ones. I left as it closed at 5. The sun had already set, and I didn't want to drive down the dirt road. I guess I was feeling really guilty about not stopping, and I didn't want to pass the strange scene again, especially in the pitch-black darkness, so I took the highways home. The next day, still feeling guilty, I decided to drive down the dirt road again to see if I could see any traces of an accident or any other clues about what happened to these two men. Here is where things got really strange. I drove the entire length of the dirt road, forward and back, and not only was there no sign of an accident, there was no spot where the barbed wire fence wasn't about a foot away from the road. There was nowhere a pickup truck could have parked with its front grille touching the fence without completely blocking the road. And I had not had to swerve around the truck at all as I passed it. And I'm certain that's what I had seen. And there was no tall grass growing at any point along the road. It was all high desert scrub plants, sparsely growing and about an inch tall. There was nowhere a man could have been lying next to the road where I wouldn't have seen the entire man with nothing blocking my view, especially from my high vantage point seated in an SUV. But I hadn't. All I had seen of him was his arm raised in the air above tall grass, slowly waving. And this was a very rural road. No one was out there mowing the grass to keep it tidy. And it wasn't even grass growing there. There was nothing for anyone to mow. So there was no way I could have seen what I saw. And yet I did see it. But I can't think of any explanation for it, natural or supernatural. Even they were ghosts, or it was a time warp, don't make any sense. Ghosts and time warps can't explain the movement or the placement of a fence or change the type of vegetation growing on the ground. So I don't know what I witnessed that day, and it's haunted me ever since. About 20 years ago, at 3 or 4 a.m. on a residential street, driving in my dad's 3/4-ton extended cab, extended box Cummins turbo diesel Dodge work truck in the middle of winter, northwest Ontario, Canada. I was coming back from a friend's house. It had started to snow pretty hard, so I was taking it easy, when all of a sudden, I saw something in the middle of the road, but couldn't quite make it out. Suddenly, to my horror, I realized what it was, and panic took over. It was a toddler in a diaper, and nothing else. No shoes, clothes, jacket, hat, or mitts. Just standing in the dark, in the snow, in the middle of the road in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, of course, but there was ice on the road, and the fresh snow made it even more slick. Between me slamming on the brakes and trying to turn the truck started to slide sideways toward the kid. I ended up stopping about 3 feet from the child, sideways across the entire road, with the front end of the truck lodged into the snowbank. I hopped out, grabbed the little boy, checked if he was all right, and called the cops on my cell phone. The cops, a fire truck, and an ambulance show up. I had the kid in my truck with the heat cranked, and I wrapped him up in my coat. It was freezing. Turns out the kid got out of the house when the parents were sleeping, about 4 or 5 houses down. When the police canvassed the area, they found the front door slightly ajar. The parents were absolutely shocked, and the police had a lot of questions for them, and for myself. Like, how did I end up with the kid? Where were his clothes? Who were its parents? What are you doing out at this time? Where were you going? The police doubted my story at first, but my tire tracks in the snow, the front end of the truck still partially in the snowbank, and my footprints only being around 6 to 8 feet from the driver's side door, and not leading anywhere else, all corroborated my story. The paramedics said it was a good thing I came along when I did, because the likelihood of that kid freezing to death in the snow was the most likely outcome. I've had many paranormal encounters over the years. I find them fascinating in a frightening sort of way, if that makes any sense. This experience, however, was pure terror for me. For context, I need to explain our local legend. I'm from a tiny town. You only know about this if you live here, live close to here, or know someone here. On the outskirts of this tiny town is where I live. This is also where a back road known as the Bank is. This road is extremely windy and narrow. The type of narrow that you have to get over as far as you can, on the rare occasion a car is coming. It is surrounded by thick forest on one side, and a steep bank that leads to the creek on the other. Local legend says about 60 or so years ago, a woman was traveling alone on this road late one night. It is believed she fell asleep at the wheel and ended up going over the bank. Her car was found close to the creek, horribly mangled. Her body was never found. Some say she went through the windshield into the water. Others say she stumbled out of her car into the creek. Regardless, it is believed she met a watery grave. People say the reason she was never found is that this creek is bottomless. After this, there were many reports of other drivers seeing a woman standing alongside the road after dark, only to vanish when they would slow down. Others swore a woman would just appear in their car as they were driving solo down the dark road. There were so many tales of this ghostly woman, she became known as the Lady of the Bank. Jumping to a few months ago, I had attended a gathering at a building in this area. I was told there was a wreck on the main road, and it was being blocked off. I was tired and just wanted to get home, though I felt horrible for those involved in the accident. I decided to take the bank, as it would take me past the accident and lead me out just a couple miles from my house. Mind you, I have driven this road many times before, mostly in daylight. A couple times after dark, but never alone. Of course, I was told the stories of the lady of the bank often growing up, but that honestly wasn't in my mind this night. I had other stressing matters taking up my thoughts as I drove. I had my music playing at a low volume as I was carefully gliding through the curves. The only road issue I did worry about was hitting a deer. My thoughts were harshly interrupted by a loud ding, ding, ding. My heart jumped to my throat as my eyes darted over the dash of my car. When I noticed the seatbelt icon lit up, I was befuddled as I checked to make sure my seatbelt was securely wrapped around me and fastened in place. The dinging kept on, and I glanced to the passenger seat and nearly fainted. There was a figure sitting next to me. All I could really make out in the split second I noticed them was long, dark, wet-looking hair, mostly covering the person's face as they appeared to be looking forward out the windshield. I remember a scream leaving my throat as I slammed on the brakes. The car skid to an abrupt halt, causing me to lurch forward, then be slammed back by the seatbelt. I can remember hearing my heartbeat in my ears as I looked slowly over to the once again empty passenger seat. The annoying as hell dinging stopped, and the seatbelt icon was no longer glowing on the dashboard. At that point, I stomped on the gas, deer no longer being my biggest concern. I made it home without further incident, other than the anxiety attack that still lingered. I've since told this story to a few of my family, friends, and locals. They all believe the lady of the bank tried to hitch a ride home with me that night. While my heart goes out to her, I won't be taking that road after dark again. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Links to all my shit are down at the fucking description. Man, so I know it's been a long ass time again, and I have no idea when the next one will be, if there will be one. It's just gotten so hard to find stories that are good that other people aren't doing. Also, it's, if I was making money, it'd be different, but this thing stopped doing that quite a while ago. But I still love all of you. All the people that still show up and come say hi to me. Man, when I watch YouTube, it's like now all of a sudden you can say fucking shit at certain times. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I like every guy and every video you watch. It's like, hit that like, and we know. I like when they go, well, it's free, and I know it's free. And what really cuts me is when it only takes a second. Like, don't fucking tell me how long it takes, dude. I know how fucking long it takes. Anyway, I'm not going to go into a rant on this one. Thanks to Bella Marley 420 for doing some lines for me. And I think that's about it. We're going to keep this part short. What's going to happen here is I originally started making a beat with this, and this is what it turned into. And I hope you dig it and it creeps you out. And as always, be good to animals, even people. So.
silsila laatikaisne se lähtee
Jesus. Got the fucking Hell's Angels here cruising by. My name is Rick Martinez, and I'm the very first fucking line, dude.